Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on exploring the fascinating world of near-death experiences, communication with spirit, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, Magic is Real family. Thank you so much for being here. And to those of you who are new, thank you for stopping by. I hope you love this interview. If it resonates with you, please like, share, subscribe, send to friends who you think might enjoy it. I just wanted to come on before the interview starts to let you know that I'm aware that for whatever reason, Zoom flipped into pinning mode, and I accidentally pinned Lisa so that you cannot see me interviewing her. For those of you watching as opposed to listening, I hope that this doesn't seem weird while you're watching it, but you will hear my voice, but you will only see Lisa. And I think that's just fine. Lisa's beautiful. She has a wonderful story to tell about how she became a medium after a shared death experience and interactions with her husband who passed away and who showed up to let her know that he's very much alive, only in a different form. So without further ado, that was a lot of ado. I apologize for that. Enjoy. Thank you so much for being here. Hello, Magic is Real listeners. I'm Shannon Torrance, and today I have with me the beautiful Lisa Jones, who is a near-death experiencer. She is a medium called the Millionaire Medium, which I want to ask you about. She's an author, she's an inspirational speaker, and so much more. Just want to welcome her. Welcome today, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you and just unpack all these amazing things. We were just chatting earlier and it's like, oh my gosh, we could just talk for hours.
I know. And that's why do you think I do this? It's exciting. It's exciting to geek out about this stuff. So I just want to start. Well, let's just start from today, because I know that you are, sorry, I said a near-death experiencer, but really what I meant was a shared death experiencer. So I am recently speaking to so many people who've had what we're going to call spiritually transformative experiences. So it doesn't have to be a death experience. It can also be, I've spoken to a few people who've had shared death experiencers, out-of-body experiences, and this is so exciting and fascinating to me. But I want to start just by kind of giving and having you explain an overview of what you do professionally, and the name of your book, just because I told you I don't have my glasses and I can't read off my phone because I can't see anything
No
without them.
worries.
So
No.
you're an author of a book, and what is the name of that book?
And the title of my book is The Art of Living Happy After the Loss of a Loved One. And it's really my memoir of how I moved forward after losing my husband. I was 37 and he was 44 when he died after a 7-year battle with cancer. And I really found that there were a lot of groups helping people grieve, which I think there is such a need for that. And yet there were people there that were 5 years into it and still reliving their story every day. And I did not want to be one of those people. I wanted to find my happiness and keep living and not get stuck in my grief. And so yeah, I specifically wrote my book, The Art of Living Happy After the Loss of a Loved One. So to really give people hope and to know that there is life after death, and at least in my experience, and it's amazing. And now my husband is continually helping me even to this day. We were just chatting about how he helped me find my new place here in Maui. I had gotten a notice that my rent was going up $600, and I just was like, oh my God, I can't afford this. What am I going to do? And I literally thought I was having a heart attack. It turns out it was like a panic attack, but like deep chest pain and pain down my arms. And I'm like, I'm not going to die in a hospital. I'm going to the beach. So I drove down to the beach and I met this magical woman who I'd never met before. And I was telling her my story. And she said, oh, well, my neighbors just got notice that their tenant is moving out of their little ohana, which is a little standalone house next to their beautiful house. And so I met them and they said, yes, we'd love for you to live here. And then we started chatting a little bit more. And it turns out their investment advisor was my late husband's roommate the 2 years we dated 30 years ago.
It's Synchronicity. One of my friends once said to me, I said, there are no such thing as coincidences. And she said, well, yeah, there are. And I went, no. I mean, I'm sure there are, but I definitely believe in synchronicity, and that is one of them. That is so
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
And now I know that you are a medium as well. This is something I'm really excited to speak with you about. Can you explain why you call yourself the Millionaire Medium?
Well, yes. So the night that my husband passed away, again, he had been sick with lymphoma cancer and had 3 stem cell transplants and multiple rounds of chemotherapy and radiation. And unfortunately, none of those interventions ultimately helped him. And he lost his life on February 22nd, 2004. So that was 18 years ago as we're speaking today. And that night, hospice had come actually that day. It was our first day with hospice, and they evaluated him and said, you know, he actually looks pretty good. It's probably going to be at least 2 to 6 weeks before he passes because he's showing no signs of imminent passing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. At that point in my life, I had had all my grandparents still living except one who had passed before I was, old enough to understand that. So I really had not experienced death in my life. And here my husband was about to die. And so I went to bed that night and just prayed to God and said, please help me. I don't know how we're going to do this. And the next thing I know, I was taken out of my body and I was being escorted by 2 angels to the other side. And I mean, I call it heaven. And I do believe for me that I was shown a vision of what made sense to me. And so for me, it was this beautiful, it was like the pearly gates and this gorgeous castle that was made out of gold bricks, and it had platinum roads, and everything was so pristine and beautiful. And the colors were beyond anything that I can't even articulate them because we don't have them here. And there were choirs of angels singing, and there were trumpets going, and there was an announcement, the Grand Mr. Ian Sharp is about to arrive. And all of these, they took me kind of over to this area where I could look down in this courtyard, and all of these souls were gathering together and just talking about, oh my gosh, Ian's coming, Ian's coming. And they were so excited. And then all of a sudden, this giant door started to open, and everybody turned to look, and they're like, he's here, he's here. And just at that moment, there was a knock on the door. I was sleeping in my daughter's room, and my husband was in our master bedroom with his brother. And his brother said, oh my God, Lisa, wake up, wake up. Ian just took his last breath. And in that moment, it was like a trap door opened, and I fell. I could feel myself into my body. I leapt out of bed I was so excited and like in this complete blissful state. And then I'm like, my brain immediately was like, no, this isn't appropriate. I have to be sad. Like he just died. What is that? I mean, it was just a complete scramble. So, I ran down to the bedroom where he was, and I saw his body laying there, and it was nothing more than a shell of a human being. And there was you could tell there was no life in that. And I wasn't particularly sad. It just looked like, a shell, like if you'd seen the shell on the beach. So that morning, then I had to go tell the children they had slept the night not at our home that night. One was at grandma's and one was at a friend's. And as I was blow drying my hair, this is where the medium part comes in. All of a sudden, Ian's voice is at my left ear. It's as though he was speaking to me like we are right now. And he said, oh my God, Lisa, I love you, but it is so awesome here. And I was like, oh my God. And I dropped the blow dryer. I was freaking out. I mean, I had never experienced anything like that before. And so that was the beginning of my mediumship. Well, the other thing, unbeknownst to me, was that I knew he was an executive at General Electric. That's where he worked. He was a tax director for them. And they took such great care of us during that time that he was ill. But they had an insurance policy, $1 million plus insurance policy on him that I was unaware of. So I became a millionaire and a medium in the same night. So that's how I got my name. And I was very resistant to both being a medium and both being a millionaire because, I mean, there's a lot to both of that. Like there's a lot of baggage to both of those things. So for a long time, I kept that very secret. And then one day my guides are like, you need to just get real with what's happening and get okay with it. So we want you to go get the URL, millionairemedium.com. And I'm like, this is insane. And sure enough, it was available. So I purchased it and didn't do anything with it for 2 years. And then I finally got it up and going. And actually just recently I took it down just because I don't know what my iteration is right now, but just figuring it out.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I want to say God, just for lack of a better term, because I know everyone calls it something different,
Yes.
gave you that experience to soften the blow, because losing a partner is so, I mean, it's never happened to me, but I've always said, besides losing a child, I can just imagine the depth of intimacy you have with a romantic partner is so intense, and it's just unbearable. Not to say that everyone shouldn't be allowed that, but it feels as though certain people are chosen to have these experiences because they have chosen that path in this life to become a spiritual teacher uh, or something of that nature. But it sounds like what, like you said, you came out of it blissful, because how could you not after having an experience like that? And when
Yeah.
you had this experience, I'm assuming, was it as real, if not more real, than you and I are sitting here right this minute?
Absolutely. It was so much more real than this life. I mean, I feel like this is the dream, and I was in reality there. And I love what you said. I actually call it divine dispensation, is what I was given.
Mm.
I literally thought my husband was going to hell. I was raised very religiously in the Lutheran church, and I was told if you weren't baptized, you would go to hell. And my husband refused. And now I think it's comical that I'm like, how did
Ah,
I believe this? And yet I was such in a box before this happened. This whole experience crumbled my entire foundation of my belief system, and I've had to completely reorganize my thoughts and feelings about religion, and which again, I'm pretty much just like, I know there's a direct connection, so I don't really need any organization around that. And also just kind of how sad that it's so controlling about how it tries to keep people um, in places that just love is all there is at the end of the day. And yeah, I think this was my path. And I really do believe that Ian, I mean, like, I think that we agreed to this experience beforehand. And so this was one lifetime that he was willing to, leave early so that I could have this experience. And I always say that it was the best thing that ever happened to me. If I could have changed it, I would, but I couldn't. And it actually woke me up to life. Before this, I was asleep. And it was such a beautiful awakening.
yeah, it feels very intentional. And then the way that you described hearing his voice as if he's standing next to you clearly,
Yes.
because you and I would love to know too, because as a medium, I don't have that, ability to hear a disembodied voice, or I'm sure I do, but it's never happened to me. When I
Mhm.
hear a spirit voice, it just sounds like my own thought. And some people do see spirit and say, I can see someone standing behind you, or I can hear a disembodied voice. Like, what is my question about that? Yes, it's the same thing of how does it's the same thing in relation to how you said that when you went to whatever realm we want to call that, it felt
Right.
so real. And then the
Yeah.
voice felt so real. How does the human mind process that without going into some sort of weird shock? I wonder.
I agree with you. And it's so interesting because I host once a month, I host a group for the IANS International Association of Near Death Studies. So I host a free support group, or I have been for the last 4 years, where people are able to come and share their stories. Because if you share your story with the wrong people, they will tell you you're crazy. They will make you feel like you shouldn't talk about this. Like, it's crazy how, to me, our society is in general not very supportive and open of this, and yet it's such a natural experience. And what I found as a former CPA, I used to work for Price Waterhouse in San Francisco, and then Ernst and Young in DC, a hedge fund just outside New York City. And after people heard about my experience, and then I started doing my stage shows and things like that, I had CEOs, like people at the tops of these big companies, like kind of at a cocktail party, like kind of saddle up next to me and be like, so my dad died and he came to me and I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
And I think because I'm kind of in the normal profession of like an accountant, or I was, they felt comfortable because I think in general, we just have this real taboo around mediums and all that. And I never even liked calling myself a medium. And I always say I'm the reluctant medium because I
I
never
know.
chose this path. It was not at all anything. And yet, I'm constantly seeing people like say, oh, mediums are just, frauds, and they're just
Mhm.
using parlor tricks and this and that. And I'm like, dude, I wish you were in my shoes and you knew what was going on, because when I get information, it's not, I mean, it is definitely not a parlor trick. I am not sitting around Googling people so that I can like
I
what
know.
tell them stuff that's on. I mean, I just find it crazy that people even believe that. I guess there are people that do that. I don't know of any, but I mean, most people I know are very authentic, true, caring people.
Same. I'm so glad you said that. I just had I haven't gotten too much of it. I think people who think I'm nuts just don't say anything about it. But I did get one comment online that said something like, "Oh, great, another fake," which I think I mentioned in my last episode. But I thought that's so it's frustrating. It's not frustrating because I need them to believe what I believe. That's their path, and that's completely fine. I was an atheist for a lot of my life and an agnostic in others. It's just it's frustrating in that the belief is, "Oh, if you say you can do this, then it has to be fake. I
Right.
know that it has to be fake." And I kind of said to the person, which I normally don't respond, but I wanted to respond kindly and just say, consider the fact that that's your reality. And I totally respect that. This is my reality. I'm
Mhm.
not faking this. This is
Right.
something that's so real to me. And I mean, it means so much to me because it does allow you and I to be of service in a way that is such an honor, and it's exciting, and it really wakes you up to the true nature of ourselves. And the ancients knew about this stuff.
Right. Oh my God. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was
Talk
just
about it.
reading about that. Well, I
Yeah.
was just reading. Oh my gosh, my whole body is chilling, which is always truth.
Yeah, I just
No,
got it
I
too.
mean,
I just got
right.
it
Oh
too.
my gosh. But it's so true. Back then, it was like, I mean, people were revered that could bring through spirit, and people were, like constantly being, wanting that in their life and bringing it in and purposefully, interested in that and supportive of that. And then I guess, again, I almost think it was religion that made it taboo and and then the whole witch trials and all of that, which again, I think, with the DNA of that, I used to live near Salem, and so I was always like almost terrified of doing this kind of work, because I felt like from prior lifetimes, I believe I was hung or burned or
Mhm.
drowned. And so yeah, it's interesting about in the ancients used to believe in this.
Yeah, it's really, and also as technology has taken over our lives, we don't rely on our instincts as much. We don't have to. We don't have to rely on our sense of direction because we can just use Google Maps. We don't have to rely on our senses to tell us that there's a predator behind us because we don't
Right.
really have predators other than some scattered random murders around. But even then, we don't listen to our instincts as often because we dismiss it as paranoia or, oh, stop being silly or whatever it is. And there's
Exactly.
so many reasons why we don't need it. And then we go to school and we learn science and math and history and all these things that are factual.
Yes.
So I think it really takes us away from our true nature. It has a place, but we still do need this, and people don't realize it, I think. So
I
I'd love
think
to
you're
hear,
right.
yeah, and and that's what I'd like to ask you about as well. Sort of since this shared death experience, because first of all, did you tell anybody after it happened?
Well, it's so interesting. I think I started mentioning it a little bit, but I thought I was kind of crazy. I didn't want to really tell people. And then so he died in 2004, and it wasn't until 2012, no, maybe 2000. I guess it must have been 2008. So 4 years later, I actually started really my spiritual path of working with actually my teacher, Denise Lynn. And that really and then I started telling people there that, oh yeah, I talked to angels, and the mediumship part. I mean, Ian was talking to me all the time, but I wasn't really getting other passed away loved ones right away. It was more when I was doing angel readings for people. And then actually one of my clients was there, and she said, oh my gosh, the room is filled with angels, and I couldn't see them. I don't have the vision. I've
Yeah.
had it a couple of times, but it's not a consistent thing. And so then it was so interesting because she saw a young guy, like a 27-year-old, and she could see him and she could actually hear him, and I couldn't. but that was my second husband's golf assistant had just died in a house fire. And so he came to her and said, tell Lisa that she needs to keep doing this work, that this is her. And I'm like, so at the end of the whole session, I'm like, I think I owe you money. I don't think this
Yeah.
is a, you know.
Wow, that's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Like, what point did you realize after this shared death experience happened that you needed to pursue it? I know wanted wasn't
Well,
exactly in the
it's,
cards, but
yes, exactly. Well,
how
the
did you know
interest
where to even go or how to
Well, that
start?
was what was so interesting is that so a week before my husband died, like I said, he was 44 when he died. And so he had said, I so regret my life's work. I know I should have helped more people. I wish I had been a doctor and helped more people. And instead I was an attorney and just pushed numbers around on pieces of paper and helped organizations, make more money. And he's like, I just so regret that. And that broke my heart. I mean, he was a wonderful man and, such a loving husband and father. And so then he died and I got on with my life. And then I went back to the hedge fund and I'm making great money. And as I approached my 44th birthday, I'm like, oh my God, all I'm doing is pushing numbers around on pieces of paper. I don't want to regret my life. And meanwhile, I've been quietly doing these little readings for people on the side and just, because again, I've never had any formal training. I've never done anything like that. So finally my guides kept saying, you've got to quit this hedge fund. And I reluctantly did. And then not only did 6 months later, did my hedge fund get raided by the FBI and 3 of my principals went to jail. And they were like, yeah, we were trying to get you out of there before that happened, so you didn't get deposed. And, and again, I didn't know anything about what they were doing there, but they were like, we were trying to just get, take you out of that. And then I just kind of bumbled my way into being, all of a sudden I was asked if I wanted to do a stage show. I had sponsored Gabrielle Bernstein. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
I do.
She was doing a show at the Ridgefield Playhouse. And so they had asked me, well, do you want to come and, in the lobby? And I sponsored her. And so I just did these little 3-card readings for people. And I mean, in 30 seconds, people were just walking away. Like it was just truth.
How did you know you could do, was it because, was the information coming through so clearly that you just knew you could do it because it was happening as you were interacting with people? Or was it trial and error? I guess the question, because I know like for me, I didn't have this profound thing happen. I learned how to distinguish my energy from the energy of spirit so that I can sense, so I know, okay, that's coming from spirit, this is coming from me, but it's so subtle for me.
It's like a vibrational, I find it's a vibrational difference, right? Like whether it's an angel or a passed away loved one, like I can tell energetically, like which is which. Is that what you were able to discern?
Yeah, yes. And I was wondering how you go from obviously, working at this hedge fund to now you're giving readings. Was it happening organically as you were interacting with people, or did you say, I'm going to practice and see what comes through?
I guess a lot of it was really actually the last 2 years, my husband was sick. Somebody had taken me for an angel reading and something happened there for me. A switch was flipped on and I'm like, I have to do this. And for me, so I very quietly was filling journal after journal of angels coming through me for me, just, you're going to get through this. You're going to, your husband's going to be okay. I mean, it was just very loving, gentle guidance that they were kind of guiding me on. But again, I wasn't telling people that I was talking to angels on a daily basis, and it started very, like you said, kind of, I had read a book called Angel Speak, and that gave very detailed information about how to do automatic handwriting. And so I started doing that. And initially I just got very basic, like, you are loved and all is well. And again, I'm like, is that me? Is that them? Like, who is that? But over time, I could, again, like you were mentioning, that vibrational difference, I could tell. And then eventually, as I wrote more and more, they were using words I'd never heard before. Like I'd have to look up words because it was just things or vernacular that I just wasn't, it wasn't me. So I could very clearly tell that it was something other than me. So that was fun. And then, so like I said, I was doing that. And then I went to Denise Lynn's events. And I actually chose after that, I could have gone more deeply into like, she's the one who I learned how to do the cards. It was her cards that I started working with, but I chose to go back to the hedge fund and, it was there a couple more years before it was really my own like playing with myself, as far as practicing the cards and writing that. But then I started, as soon as I quit the hedge fund, I was invited to start doing angel readings, where I had been given that angel reading. It's called Touch of Sedona in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And that
I'm
was a
from
real,
Westport.
oh,
I was
okay.
going to ask when you said Ridgefield Playhouse, I actually meant to interrupt and say, wait a second, was that in Connecticut? 'Cause I
Yes.
grew up a few towns over.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Small world,
Yep.
small world. So yeah, so that was really a great training ground there for me, is to have people come in and, just do these readings. And then Marge, the owner there, she was a real mentor. I felt like every step of the way, just the right person would show up, or the right opportunity. And so then I was doing those readings. And then, like I said, I was asked if I wanted to sponsor Gabrielle at the Playhouse. And so yeah, it was kind of embarrassing, because she was sitting there selling her book next to me, and I was sitting there doing these 3-card readings for free. And so I had a line of 40 people. And then the Playhouse director came over, and she had a reading, and she just said, oh, well, do you want your own show? And I'm like, okay. So the next thing I know, I did a show for 140 people, and I did a mediumship show. I told my story about going out to heaven. And then I brought people up on stage and just put my hands on their shoulders. And I mean,
you were able to just,
I had no idea what was going to happen. It was the most, but
terrifying.
So terrifying. And in fact, in my book, that's the opening prologue, is I was like losing my mind. I'm like, where are you? Are you going to come through? And then they did. In
They
a big
do.
way. Yeah, they do. They always do. But it's so terrifying to just put yourself out there.
I know. I actually had a dream last year, as I was just in the first year. I think I've been studying for 2 years now. And I kept having this dream where I was up on stage, and everyone's like, all right, do your thing. And I was like, is there a grandmother? Does she like bananas? And everyone was like, boo, that's not right. And so, but it's amazing how that stopped as I've become more confident recently, because I found out, and I actually did a video about this, like you said, it's so hard to explain, but once you get to that place of total surrender and trust, which you try to trust, but you're always questioning, like, well, what if it, but how, but I mean, I don't get it. What do you mean surrender? The more you do, the more you're like, oh, I actually don't have to do anything.
That's right.
I literally just have to show up. And
yes.
My friend who's a medium, Clayton, who I interviewed on this show, does something with his students called the makeup game. He said, just talk to me, make up a story. And he's done it with people, and he did it with me when I first was a little shaky. And he's like, all right, tell me, channel my friend right now. And then everything he asked me, I answered correctly. Okay, what does she look like? What color's her hair? Does she have a boyfriend? Doesn't she? How did she die? And I just bam, bam, bam was able to tell him the right answer. And it's like, oh, I just got chills.
Yeah, me too.
It's not, it feels like you're making it up, but you're not. And that's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
But how scary to get up. I've always been terrified of that. What do you mean get up on stage and do it? What if I can't do it? What if I panic?
Oh my God. Well, the second time I did it, I went out on stage, and so the first part again is telling my story, and then I do take them on a guided meditation. And then I said, okay, let's raise the lights, and I'll bring some people on stage. I didn't realize, but they had basically sold out the place. So there were like 450 or 500 people there. And I was like, oh my God. And then I brought a woman up, and I put my hands on her shoulders, and I got nothing. Yeah. And I said, okay, guys, I just need a minute. I'm not getting anything. I'm going to step off the stage and gather myself, and then come back on. And it was oh my God, it was just crazy. So I went to the green room, and I'm just like, oh my God, angels come in, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, everybody, please. And all of a sudden it felt like they put their hands on my shoulders, turned me around. I marched back out there, put my hands on her shoulder. And then it was just like, who's Bob, who died in February of this year, and like, it was just amazing. And afterwards, people were like, that was the most real thing I have ever seen, because you weren't just like, oh, here's a grandma with flowers or whatever, right? Like, it literally.
Yeah.
But I was terrified. And again, I didn't know at that point, I really didn't even know about grounding. I didn't know about like putting an energy field around me. Like, I've learned so much over the last 18 years. Back then, I was wiped out for like a week after that. And I would never do it again that way. And in fact, I really don't enjoy doing the mediumship work as much in that setting, because it was just like 450 desperate people wanting to
Yeah.
connect. And it was like I felt their energy coming at me. And then I felt all like 2,000 entities coming through my head. So it was just a really crazy,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I'm
That
more about
sounds,
helping people like connect themselves. I have a little process, and I'd be happy to share with your
yeah.
listeners, called the PALS method, so they can
Yeah, share,
connect.
because I mean, also love them to know that they could
Yeah. If they
connect with you for this, but I'd
Yeah,
love to
yeah,
hear about it too.
absolutely. So it's called the PALS method, PALS, and it's very similar to the Angel Speak book but that one was a little bit more religious, and so this is a little bit more, I just think, less religious-y, or whatever that word
Yeah.
is. But P is for prepare. So basically, get a notebook and a pad, or I mean, and a pencil, or pen, and turn off all electronics. That's the thing, like we talked about. I mean, electronics these days are just running our world, so it's best to just like be in nature, or just in a quiet place. You're not going to be interrupted. So that's the P. The A is ask. And so at the top of your paper, you write, "Dear angels, what would you like me to know?" Or if you're trying to specifically connect with a loved one, dear their name, what would you like me to know? So PAL is listen. And this is what we were talking about. Discerning is so difficult to know. Is this me? Is it them?
Yeah.
I don't know. And this is where really practice, 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 because initially, and like I'd mentioned earlier, what I found is I would just get very simple, like, "You are loved," or, "I miss you," or just so, and you just are like, well, that's obvious. And yes, it is. And we overcomplicate things. It's very simple in the after world. I mean, as you get more and more attuned, then you get more and more sentences and more, information. But initially, you're just allowing that energy to titrate kind of through your system and out onto your page. So it's just a matter of, quietly listening and writing down, and then looking back. And sometimes I would look back and not even remember writing what I wrote, because you're so in the flow, you're so surrendered and open. And then, so that's, prepare, ask, listen. And then S is always say thank you, because, that allows them to come again and again. And so, yeah, that's my little PALS method.
Oh, I love it. I've tried automatic writing before, and I just feel like I don't know. I want it to click for me. So I think,
Yeah,
like you said, it's practice where I
it
write
is.
stuff and I'm like, am I supposed to not pay attention to what I'm writing? Am I supposed to, it's sort of like not knowing where to put my consciousness while it's happening.
Yes. Yeah. Ideally, it's just like you don't want to be in a meditative state, but you also don't want to be scrambled around, like, all right, just like take a few deep breaths and just be in the present moment. And then just whatever drops into your head. For me, it always feels like it drops and just
Yeah.
lands like right in the center. And very few times have I actually had that disembodied voice, like my husband. He actually came to me in full apparition too, like 6 weeks after he died, which was
Can you
insane.
explain what that was like?
I mean, that was truly one of the most miraculous evenings. It was actually Easter Eve. So, and I just got chills.
Yeah.
Saturday night before Easter morning. And I was trying to figure out where I was going to put the Easter eggs for my children. They were 1 and 3 when he was diagnosed, and 8 and 10 when he died. So here I am by myself, just, the first holiday. And he loved doing that kind of thing. And it just always, I was like, what am I going to do? I'm by myself. And we used to hide them outside, but it was raining. And so I remember looking out the window in my bedroom and just like, oh my God, and just being so sad. And I turned around, and there he was, in complete, I mean, he looked like himself, but like I could see through him, but in his perfect, like he was the perfect weight. He was healthy, because over the course of his illness, he had gained a lot of weight and lost a lot of weight, and, had lost his hair. And so he just looked spectacular. And I just was like, and then it was just telepathy. He just was like, "You've got this. I love you. Don't worry." And I just was like, oh my gosh. And then he came for me. He opened his arms, and just as he hugged me, he just went right through me. And oh, I can feel it right now. And then
Oh,
he went and he laid on the bed right where he passed away, on his side of the bed. He lay down, and I jumped into bed, and I just looked at him because I didn't want him to go anywhere. And
yeah.
then he just literally just like evaporated right
I
into
just got
the, I
chills.
know
Like, like,
it was one of the most extraordinary experience. I mean, you know, again, I've had so many, but that was really, really magical. I've never had another like apparition like that before.
That's amazing. In fact, I know I kind of explain to people the way that I feel when spirits with me. Does this happen to you? I get only on one side of my body the chills go down. And I don't know, like if I have chills because I listen to something beautiful or
Right,
someone's like, or it's a full body feeling of almost like it's different. This
right.
feels just more like a very like a shower of
Oh,
energy, but
yes.
it usually
Wow.
starts in the back of my scalp and goes down my shoulder and down one leg, but I don't know why it's only on one side of my body. Sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's on the right, but it's usually my right. And it feels like that's where they kind of hang out. I don't know why. I don't know
Wow.
what that is. I always wondered, I'm like, some other people have said that happens for them too, but
Yeah, mine is generally more of a full body, you know, at this base of my my neck there, and then just down my spine. And
yeah.
that's like truth. That's truth. That's, you know, if a spirit's in around or whatever. But yeah, that's
Yeah, oh my
it's
gosh,
like
it
a
was so
truth detector, you know. I mean, actually
well,
somebody was just sharing with me about they thought they had been molested as a child from a priest, and they were saying it was maybe one this guy or that guy, but then they found out there was a third person. As soon as he said that, it's like chills. I'm like, that's who it was. And he's like, ah, that is just like, thank you, like, because again, and I said, well, that's what I'm getting. I always get truth, and so yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
it really does help in
Yeah,
readings, and I've had readings where it doesn't happen, and then I start to go, "Nothing's happening.
I
Because I
know.
get reliant on that. It's a gift.
Yes.
Some spirits can give me so much feeling.
Mhm.
And I did a reading this week that just blew me away because I've never felt so much physical stuff happening and went into meditation, and then all of a sudden, I got not just like chills, but knots in my stomach. It was actually
Yeah.
sort of an uncomfortable feeling. I was fine.
Mhm.
Really intense knots in my stomach. Couldn't breathe. And I was like, "Whoa, this guy is like there's something really big with this guy." And I was like,
Yes.
I hear trauma, I hear apologies. I have to and so I said to the woman, all I'm saying is there's somebody here that trouble breathing, knots in his stomach, just having so much trouble communicating. She's like, "That's my husband." And it
Oh
was,
my
it all
God.
made sense that he just had a really hard time getting stuff out because he'd
Right.
stuffed so much stuff. As soon as I
Oh,
gave her the message, it just went whoop, and it was gone. And I like that. I want
yeah.
them to give me that because that's
I
how I
agree.
know that I
Mhm.
can trust it.
Yes.
That's so interesting. And then when you hear from your husband, I don't know if it's as often, you'll have to tell
Mhm.
us. Do you still hear it as his actual voice, or now is it more of a subtle thought?
Yeah, it's more of a subtle thought, and more, but again, very direct. I mean, there was one case in particular. My son had just graduated from University of, well, Clemson University in
Yeah.
South Carolina, and their team was going to the national championship. And so my son had come to Hawaii that Christmas to visit me, and so we weren't sure if they were going or not. And so they did win the game, and so they were going to be in San Jose, and Ian came to me very clearly and just said, you know, he needs to go. And I'm like, I don't think he wants, because he's saying, you know, I don't want to go. They're not supposed to win. I think that would be a downer to go and have them lose. And Ian's like, I'm going to help them win. And I'm like, okay. So I'm telling this to my son, and my son's a little like hesitant about this kind of stuff. I mean, he's actually seen a few um and like, I don't know what you call them, ghosts or something, which
Mhm.
freaks him out, which is exactly what would happen to my late husband when he was young. He saw a lot of entities and things, and it just, he
Oh,
never wanted to talk about
interesting.
it, never wanted to deal with it, but it was happening. And so this is now my son. He's now 26, but this was back when he was 21. And so I just said to him, I said, well, why don't you go? I said, Daddy's going to help them win. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but you know, so he ended up going. And again, they were underdogs. They weren't supposed to win. They ended up winning 44-16. My husband was 44 when he died. He died on 2/22. He died in 2004. I mean, talk about 4, 4, 4, 4. Like there were so, and I'm like, Oh my God, I think he helped him them win. Like, I didn't know, like, I
Amazing.
really, like, what?
That's so crazy. I oh, the chills just keep coming.
I know. Is
Um,
it one side or the or both?
I know it's for me, it's on my right side. It's on my right side. I don't know why. It might just be where my receptors are or whatever
Yeah,
in
it could
my
be.
body.
That's
So
right.
one of the things, I mean, I know that we're talking about how beautiful your interactions have been. But and one thing I think that's really important, at least to me, the reason I love doing mediumship even more. I love talking to people who aren't in deep grief. That's it too.
Yes.
But I think what's such a blessing about being able to do this work is like you, I prefer to do one-on-one connections because it's very intimate
Yes.
and it allows us to be able to hold space for somebody in their grief.
Mhm.
It's somebody they can talk about their loved one with endlessly, and we'll listen and we can relive memories with them. And I think
Mhm.
it becomes a very strong bond. In fact, it's like I feel like I'm friends with everyone I've ever read now, and it's impossible to keep up with them all. But one of the things that comes along with all of this is, of course, grief. And of course, not, I don't want to say that, I don't want to overshadow the fact that I'm sure losing your husband has been painful and hard at times. And I know that, and I do want people to read your book, but I also would love to know just uh, generally, or any little nuggets of wisdom you have about how do you
Mhm.
continue your life and move forward after
Yes.
grief?
Yes. Yes. The art of living happy after
Yes,
the
the
loss
how
of a
do you
loved
live
one.
happy?
And that is, and it is a real art, I do believe. And I think part of it for me, and again, I'll speak for me
Yeah.
because everybody has their own experience. But for me is, like I said, I had gone to a support group right after my husband died, and mainly for my children, but there was a parents group. So I went in there and everybody's going around the room talking about when they lost their loved one and how long ago. And like I said, the majority of the room, people had been going for between 3 and 5 years, like on a weekly thing and just reliving it. And I'm like, I don't want to be here in 3 to 5 years. I want to be happy. I had been, you know, I mean, we were married 13 years, but 7 of those years I was a caregiver and I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mother and, be a lover and, have a spouse to travel with and those types of things. So I made a decision right then and there that I would continue grieving as it arose, but I was also going to continue living my life because actually my husband and I had a beautiful conversation just 2 nights before he died. And he said, I want you to get married. I give you my blessing. I want, you to buy the, what was it that was out then? I don't know, it was the Lord of the Rings, like, multi-pack for the kids at Christmas this year. Like he was
Yeah.
being very specific about the things that, he wanted my children or our children to experience, but also for me to move forward and that he would bless that. And that was so meaningful. And I know a lot of people don't get that either. They lose somebody without being able to get that blessing from them. And that can be very difficult to move forward. So 30 days after my husband died, I took off my wedding ring and I said, okay, God, I am ready for somebody that, will love me and my children as if it's their own and someone with no baggage. And that's pretty much, I left it open ended beyond that. And 4 months later, I met this amazing guy, and we were married for 14 years. And then we ended up. I wanted to come to Maui, and he really didn't. He's from Ireland, and I mean, it was a conscious uncoupling. We both
Yeah.
agreed, and part of it was my spirituality just continued to keep growing, and he's an amazing man, but just not interested in this whole field. And so it can be difficult when people
Yeah.
start going down this path, and unless you're on the same page, sometimes it's just like I don't drink anymore. I just want to meditate and do yoga and when your significant other wants to go out to the bars or just watch television. I don't watch television. I mean,
Same.
it's just I don't eat meat or rarely I do. I mean, it's just a different experience. So and I think he's a wonderful person, but we were just ready for a different experience at this point.
Yep, I have a very similar experience. Leaving my last relationship, wonderful person, just I
Yeah.
just didn't want to go. He wanted to go out to the bars and I wanted to stay home and meditate and do yoga.
Ex-
And we were like
Exactly.
Dharma and Greg. It was like really, you know,
Yes.
just I became like totally enmeshed in this. And this is why, and I like to be alone a lot, because
Yes.
alone with spirit. I like to do spiritual work. And
Mhm.
that's just what brings me the most joy. So I can understand that can be, that's a
Yes.
thing.
It
So,
is.
but you had a good 14 years. And
Yes. Yes.
I know that you can't, grief is grief. We have to feel it. I always say, I love that quote, the only way out is through, or
Yes.
the
Yes.
best way is through. And so for people, how can people move forward when they're in that pain that's so, it just feels like they can't even breathe
Right.
sometimes. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
know there's no real answer because everyone's different. But
Mm.
what would you say about people who are like, I just can't get out of this?
Yeah. And I've been through that even here, on my own. And part of it too is, even like, to me, the more spiritual I've become, I'm almost like, okay, I'm done on this planet Earth. Like, let
Yeah.
me move on, because I have no fear of death. So
Yeah.
I'm just like waiting, I'm just being told what to do, how to help, I'm just here to be of service at this point. I'm really not, you know, I, I don't know. It's just interesting. So as far as the grief goes, the more that I just, again, surrender into it and allow it to wash over me, generally it's like waves that come, and sometimes they're really big waves, and I get pulled under and I lose myself, for days or weeks at a time. And it's important at that point to reach out. I found with friends that I can just talk to and share with. And it's even, I feel like living on Maui, it's almost like you're not allowed to be depressed, because what are you talking about, you live in Maui, you can't be depressed. Well, I've been depressed here, and
Yeah.
I mean, to the point of just like, I'm just going to walk into the water and be done with this. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, something always pulls me back, and I feel like, it's never done till it's done, and I'm not done yet. So I'm just going to keep going. And spirit always intervenes. I feel like, like this, like I said, I thought I was having a heart attack, and I thought, oh my God, now he's done with me. I got to go move somewhere. Am I going to move? And then I go to the beach, and here I am in this beautiful new place that I am so happy. And I'm so grateful that actually that they raised my rent, because this is so much better than where I was.
I love that
And
lesson.
I would have never, I would have never gone looking to move, So I feel like it was like spirit kicking me and saying, come on, let's go. We got a better place for you.
Yeah, I do really love that concept because I've found it to be true in my own life. I have to remind myself of this, but that uh, things fall apart so better things can come together. And
That's
I just really have seen that at work where you think you're losing something, but it's just, I don't know, it's like the tower card where it looks like everything's crumbling, but really it's just crumbling to create new ground for
make it
something to
better.
rise from the ashes, which, I just, again, chills again.
Yes.
Chills
Yes.
again, where, and I don't know why I even ever get stressed out because I have to remind myself there's a reason why this is unfolding the way it is. Just wait,
That's
just
right.
see, which is
And I
really
love what you
wonderful.
just said, because I think that's part of it, is when we do want something different, we have to understand that there is going to be a tower moment of everything crumbling, so that universe can reorganize. Because currently, it's like, okay, the universe has like gotten you to where you're at, but then if you want something different, oh well, then we need to, you know put everything back together and toss it again, and recreate. So if anything, we should just know that if we're wanting something different in our life, that to expect it to crumble and fall apart, and realize it's going to get better. So,
Yeah, which
but
is
again,
hard
I
when you're
was the
in it.
one. It is so hard, and I was
Yeah.
in it. I mean, like I said, 6 weeks ago, I was beside myself. I mean, I was having a health issue. My car stopped working. I mean, getting this notice about I mean, like everything around me was crumbling, and I just was. I mean, normally I've lived such a magical life, so that was hard. It was really hard, but
I
here I
do.
am, survived.
We are. And I know it's hard to keep our eye on that when things are crumbling elsewhere. Obviously, what's
Yes.
happening in Ukraine, for example,
Oh, exactly.
like you can't even wrap your head around how is this happening in this modern world? Like in this day and age, how is that happening?
Yes.
I think that it's a greater example of things really imploding. Like, I mean, it's really bad. And I'm hopeful. I don't want to like minimize anyone's pain because it's just horrific, but I do have this faith that
Yes.
things are crumbling there's a greater like reason that,
Yes. I
not
agree.
again, not
Yeah.
to minimize the loss of
No,
life and
absolutely.
the
I mean, and it's,
suffering and fear, but
yeah.
it just feels like it's hard to think of that when you're going through this, but I do think that from a spiritual perspective, from the other side, it
Yeah.
does have a purpose, and it is shedding light. I think that's the thing, is that
Mhm.
with darkness, when darkness comes, the light is revealed. It's sort of like,
Yes.
I was saying, I think I said this maybe, but it's like a big rain where all sort of like the worms come out, but it also it's like it brings out new life. It brings out the light workers. It brings out people's compassion. We're
Yeah.
all we're all collectively caring about this thing that's happening, and it's drawing people out to say, how can I be of service? What can we do? How can we make this world
Yes.
better so that this doesn't happen again? And I think
Right.
that's the positive that comes from it.
Yeah.
Um, and
I,
so what I know that you've spoken about a lot of people who've had near death experiences or shared death experiences. Now that they know what awaits them, it is hard to assimilate here and kind of keep doing this, even though it's like you live in paradise. It's the next thing to heaven. But of course, we have our human difficulties
yes.
day to day and challenges. Um, but you had talked about, being here to be of service. And I think,
Mhm.
what is it that you hope to accomplish? What is it that you, I guess, gives you that sense of purpose? And what's your, I don't know how to word this. I don't even know what I'm asking you. I just know that I want to say, what is it that you feel the most drawn to do to be of service? Let's just leave
Yes.
it
Well,
there.
I think what it's really helped me do is I'm here to shine light on death and to help
Yeah.
people not grieve as maybe deeply and hard, as I feel like really society lends itself to kind of promote that, which I know sounds a little odd, but I really think that if we could reframe our thoughts around death, um, and to know that it's not an ending. I mean, yes, it's an ending of that physical being on this planet Earth, but it's a beginning for them in their next realm. And I just got big chills. My whole body
Oh,
is chilling. To really support and be excited for that instead of looking at it as some tragedy, because I think that's because I got that vision of seeing everybody so excited to see Ian coming back home. It, like, you look at birth into this world, and many times it's in like a sterile, dark hospital room with, glove people are in masks and gloves, and it's just not very warm and welcoming. And
yeah.
meanwhile, what I got to witness is this amazing birth back into, the next step in life. And so if I can help people, in that time. And I'm a hospice volunteer, which I adore that work,
Yeah.
especially with imminent people that are just on the, almost crossed over. Typically they're unconscious, and I just get to sit and hold space for them and commune with them telepathically. And it's one of the greatest gifts that I enjoy doing, to let them know. And especially here on island, there's many people here that don't have family members. So to be able to sit with that person who doesn't have anyone, physically here, although that's all been taken away with what we've just experienced, which has been very difficult for me and for people to die alone, which I think is one of the worst travesties that has happened throughout this whole entire
Oh, yeah.
COVID situation. And however, but again, like, I love to be a hospice advocate. I love to, and I know there's some hospices aren't as great as others, but for the most part, their hearts are in the right place. And it's really helping people in their final time here on this planet Earth to just find that peace and comfort and support and love. And so, yeah, shining light on death and helping people just know that, yes, it's difficult to lose someone, but life
Yeah.
does continue. And the more that you can embrace them on the other side and get to know them there and have a relationship with them there, it just makes your life so much better, rather than like I said, staying in that group and going every week and just reiterating how your person died, and you're still angry and upset and mad. And yes, those are all things that we need to feel and move through. But it, like you said, the only way out is through, and to, you know, feel those feelings as they come up, but then keep living life. We're here. Cause that's the one thing when I channel passed away loved ones, they're like, oh my gosh, if I had known that I was on the 3D world to create and to love and to hold each other and to caress one another and to kiss and to make love and all of that, like I would have done so much more of it. You know, everybody, so many people are so caught up in their little, I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I eat, and I go to bed and then do it all over again. And it's like, oh my gosh, no, like go paint, go make music, go make love, go, we're here to experience things. So I think that's really part of what this is. The less you're afraid of death, the more you can fully live life.
I think that's true. I know that's been the case for me since having opened myself up to all of this and doing this
Yeah.
podcast and becoming a medium. It is so helpful, and I know it doesn't take away if you lose a child or something
Oh, of
like
course.
a
Yes.
partner. It's
Yes.
excruciating to miss that person. But I know from even just having lost one of my best friends a few weeks ago, I of course I sobbed and felt pain and I miss him and actually kicked my feet like a little baby. I was like, "No. I refuse. I don't accept this. I don't want this." But then all I keep going back to is I am so happy because I know where he is. I know this is what's best for him. This is what's best for his soul. I wouldn't say that to his family or whatever, but
No,
I
no. But
I know. I'm like he keeps telling me just by reiterating with the chills when I
yes.
talk about it like,
Yeah.
"Yes, I'm happy." I heard him actually say in my own voice, but I heard him because he just said, "I'm free." And I was like, I know, I know. I
Yes.
know. I'm just mad. I just miss you, but I also know that it's like something to celebrate at the same time, which is weird. I mean,
Yes.
he
No,
was,
and that's exactly. I love
yeah,
that. It is really a celebration of them. And the other thing I love to talk or think about is like, why do we so focus on that last day of a person rather than like all the life that they
I
had,
know.
or it's there's a lot
It's
more to
so
life than
true.
just that last day, and we somehow that's become our focus, and that's sad to me.
Well, you just gave me that message, I think from him, because that's when I just remembered that's when he said it, because I said, we, a lot of his friends don't have access to the
Mhm.
autopsy report. So we know sort of what happened, but not exactly. And all of us are like, we just want to know. I just want to know exactly
Mhm.
what his last moments were. And when I said to him, can you just tell me? I kind of heard him say, I was in Costa Rica and I'm walking
Yeah.
through the jungle alone and felt him. I was like, can you just tell me though? And I heard him say, it doesn't matter. And I was
Exactly.
like, but I
I love
just
that.
want to know. And he goes, I'm free.
Yes.
That's what you need to know. And
Yes.
I know.
And
It's
I've got
just,
total chills. I mean, literally, my hair is standing up on my arm right now.
yeah, his thing
And
was
that's,
I left. That's all that
left.
matters. It was
Yes.
I needed to go and I know that.
Yeah.
I'm like my soul knew the whole time that we were hanging out because he moved out here to Virginia from LA like I did. And the whole
Mhm.
time now looking back, I'm like, it all felt so magical and tenuous. Like
Yes.
there was this, it was meant to be this way. It
Mhm.
was meant to end here, but it's not over. It's not an
Yes.
end. It's a new beginning.
That's exactly
And
right.
so
I love
that's,
that. I love that.
yeah. And I just got more chills. So and that's why this podcast and interviewing people like you who can
Mhm.
testify and just say, open your mind to the fact. It doesn't mean you won't sob, you won't miss them. There's nothing that you don't, that's okay. You can completely feel pain and grief. That's normal. But
Mhm.
also just remember it isn't an end. They are still
That's
very
right.
much alive and you will see them again in the same, we are both in the same form.
Yes.
Have you heard, I'm sure you have, but are you able to communicate with your own loved ones? I know the answer is yes, but as clearly as you've been able to with your husband, I'm just going to ask that.
Great question. I think, like my mom, yes, my mom and I are very close. And then she died exactly 10 years after my husband did. And it was really crazy. She was over in Kauai on a 30-day vacation. And then on the last day, she called and left me a message. She said, I don't want to leave. I love it here so much. And then she hung up the phone and had a stroke. And I had been out here visiting her. And as I left, I had this premonition, this knowing that it's like I was rolling my bag out to the car, and it's like, you are going to be back here in a week and something will have happened to your mother. And I'm like, what? No, I refuse that. And I
refuse that.
completely like, just, I mean, I didn't say anything to my mom. I just was like, what the heck? It was so weird. As I was walking, it was almost like I felt like I walked through a threshold, because it was like before knowing and then after knowing. And I couldn't not know that, you know. I actually had flown from Kauai into New York, and my husband and I flew to Ireland for our nephew's confirmation. I was there a week, talked to my mom several times, and then flew home. I had just landed, and that's when she had left me the message that she didn't want to leave. And then I got home, and my stepdad called and said, oh my God, your mom's had a stroke. You need to come back. And it was a week later, exactly. And so that night, I actually laid on my bed. I had to repack my clothes, and then I waited for the car to come pick me up to take me to JFK. As I'm laying there, I felt like a cat jump up on the bed, which she had a little spirit cat that I had led her on a guided meditation when I was out in Kauai. And I could hear it purring. I could hear it physically purring, and I could feel it kneading, you know, how cats do.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this energy, it was like a tsunami is what it felt like. My mother's energy just came over me like a wave. And she said, you told me we'd be able to communicate when I was on the other side. And I'm like, oh, and I just laid there and just let her just infuse me with this beautiful love. And that, again, I could hear her voice plain as day, as though, you know, it was her voice and her, but it was almost like it was a megaphone, like just so excited. And so I laid there in that energy. I don't know how long, maybe, you know, not, it was probably a minute or two. I don't know, but I just didn't want it to end. And I thought she had died. And so then I called my brother on the way to the airport. I said, oh my God, mom came to me last night. He said she came to me too. And she showed him where he was going to buy a new house and what he was going to do with it. And all that happened later. And I didn't want to talk to my stepdad, because if she had died, I didn't want to fly all the way to Kauai to find out. But I arrived, I got into a car, got to the hospital. She was in the ICU. She sat up, she looked at me eye to eye, and then she was unconscious for 5 more days, and then she passed away. But it was like so awful, and yet the most, again, amazing experience to have happen. So she waited, my brother flew out. So we were all with her husband, myself, and my brother, and held her hand as, you know, she took her last breath.
And
So,
the question I have about that is, her soul was able to come to you when she wasn't technically, her
right.
body wasn't technically dead.
Yes.
And I know that this happens often. People say that people with dementia, Alzheimer's, for example, sort of are 1 foot on the other side and 1 foot here. So sometimes they can sort of travel. How does that work, do you think?
I know, it's such a great question, because I was shocked. I mean, I literally thought she had crossed over, you know, when that
Yeah.
happened. But really, they're actually doing a study at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and they are studying, it's part of a shared death. That's one of a shared death experience, is a premonition or a pre, you know, experience before death, like a spiritual transformative experience before death. And so that's what that one was with me and her. And I don't know what it is, but it really opened my eyes, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize the soul could be so, you know, in and out of the body. But I think she was unconscious in her body.
Yeah.
And so her soul was like flying around and going
Yeah.
to visit all of her, you know, people that she wanted to talk with and stuff. But it's, and interestingly too, when you were talking about having those feelings of like knots in your stomach and chest pain and all of that, I channeled for a woman one time, and it was her father who had dementia and had Parkinson's. And as I was channeling, I completely like became almost like, I felt like my hand curled up, and I just felt like I was, you know, turning into somebody that is in that position of Parkinson's, and almost even like, you know, like incontinent. I mean, I didn't actually
Yeah.
do anything, but I just felt like, oh my gosh, like I have no control over my body. And this is just, so it is amazing. And he was still alive. So I was channeling his energy,
It's energy.
his essence or whatever. And it
So
was
interesting.
so fascinating.
Yeah, and we are all connected and we're all part of the same energy, so it makes sense.
Yes.
And we're sort of receiving an imprint, whether they're
Mhm.
technically dead or like in my case, I kept saying, I feel like I'm being like, my chest is being like
Yes.
squashed and I'm like, and I can't breathe. And she said he had
Mhm.
COPD and he died of a heart attack. And I said, and were you the one? I said, were you in bed with him when this happened? She said, yeah. And I'm like, I feel like I'm being like like held back. And she said they did chest compressions on him for like 30
Oh,
minutes. And I'm like, that
wow.
makes sense. But I
Oh,
feel like I'm like, I kept being like this. I was like, I feel like I can't get up. But,
right. And what
and
confirmation, for healing.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, it was one of the most intense readings and one of the
Yeah.
fastest readings. I
Wow.
like to spread them out. I like to go on until I have nothing left.
Right.
Maybe one day I'll shorten them, but I like to make sure someone really gets everything
Everything.
and make sure I
Yeah.
got it all. But in this case, I felt so dense and heavy, and I was like, oh my God, there's so much trauma in this guy's background, and he has such a big apology. And she said, yes, yes, yes. And then all of a sudden he just left. And I was like, well, wait, I've only been going for 20 minutes. And I said, well, let me see if I can get anything else. Nothing. Just it was just gone.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought, well, and she's like, no, I that he gave you
That's
the
all.
message.
Yeah.
I'm like,
She's
I
complete.
and
Wow.
he just said to me, he goes, I said, he just said to me, that's it. That's all I had to say. And she said, that is so him. Like he just would be like, that's it. What else
Yep.
do you want? And I'm like, okay, I guess that's cool. But it was so amazing how your physical body can take on
Yes. It's wild.
the density of the emotions and the physical stuff, and then just have him go, she said, oh, I feel like a weight's off, and then I was fine.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
amazing.
amazing. It's miraculous and exciting and just so wonderful. What is it that if you could say, well, if you had one thing that you could say to humanity, what would you want people to know?
Well, I guess I would want people to know that there is life after death, and to just really love your loved ones while they're here. And because you never know when the last time is going to happen. And like you said, it's just shocking to me that people are treating others the way they're treating them, across this planet. And I just feel like if we could each love ourselves as much, as we love, I don't know, a puppy or a baby or a
Mhm.
kitten, like I don't know. I don't know why there's so much angst right now. And especially it just seems like it's all up, but just love, the more you can love yourself, like that's the best medicine for the whole world. Because um, trying all this greed and grabbing, and everybody's kind of like looking out for themselves. And yeah, so just love yourself, love your neighbor. That's all there
Yeah,
is at the end of the day. I feel like we're here to learn that lesson, and right now it's very difficult to find.
I agree. It's very fear, but that all
Yeah.
happens because of fear. And the more we can raise ourselves up, love ourselves, spread that energy of trust and love and faith.
Yes.
I don't know
Yes.
if it'll ever be perfect, but I do find so much hope in your story. And thank you so much for sharing it. I know that it'll bring so much peace to so many people. And in fact, my friend, I'm going to send it to the girl that he was, seeing and loved. And I want her I want her to see this. So thank
Yeah.
you so
Oh,
much.
thank you so much. I so appreciate it. It's been such a
Me
blessing.
too. I have so many chills. So bless you.
Thank you.